Hello, and welcome to episode 103 of Magic Rays of Light, a podcast exploring the world of Apple TV and so much more. I'm your host, Devon Dundee. I'm joined by my co-host, Sigmund Judge. Sigmund, it's our final episode of 2023. How are you feeling?
Tired. I feel like I'm sounding grumpier every episode, but honestly, I'm really happy. It's just been pretty wild. Fitting everything in, really. Some last-minute Christmas shopping, visiting family and friends, getting some last-minute Christmas decorations up on the front of the house last night by myself on a ladder. It was very windy, very blowy, but no National Lampoon Vacation shenanigans. So that was all very good. And honestly, I'm looking forward to spending time with family and friends, but I'm also looking forward to those quiet moments where I'm just going to get away for a couple of days and catch up on the films and TV shows that have slipped through my net in 2023. In the last week or so, I've been looking at like the end of year lists. We have our own coming up on this episode. I was blown away by how much I'd missed. Some of which I caught up on in the last few days have maybe made those lists, or at least those honourable mentions. So really looking forward to Christmas and the New Year. We celebrate it European style, so when you hear this, I will be having Christmas Eve dinner. Devon, this is a crazy time of year for you from a work point of view, but also it's a crazy year because this is going to be your first Christmas as a father. What have you got planned?
Yeah, we've got lots planned. We've actually already done a little bit of Christmas stuff with some family. We've got lots of people to see, and so we did a little bit early. We've kind of been in Christmas mode for a minute, but lots of visits. We've got Christmas Eve dinner and Christmas Day dinner and gift exchanges in between. We've got to figure out how to do gift opening with a newborn. That's going to be fun, but it's going to be great to experience it from that perspective, really focusing on the gift giving this year rather than the receiving end. But we are going to hit a little bit of a lull there right after Christmas, take a little bit of a break. And like you, I'm excited to kick back and catch up on some of the shows and films that I missed this year. Of course, we're going to get into all that soon, but we've got lots coming up on this week's episode. We're going to share our holiday viewing up next picks. We're going to have a fun Secret Santa gift exchange where you and I give each other a film to review in the new year, Sigmund. That's going to be a lot of fun. But first, let's start with our Apple TV year in review.
Yeah, let's. I mean, it's been another packed year in the world of Apple TV. And this year, more so than ever, I think it is deserving of the year in review. From the introduction to tvOS 17, to the announcement of Apple Vision Pro, which is going to be the next step in home cinema and probably productivity too, to an ever-expanding world of impressive Apple originals and a wider theatrical release of Apple original films, which I know you, amongst others, were especially excited for. 2023 really has been a year like no other for Apple TV. It started in January with the reintroduction of HomePod, something that we were both very, very excited about. And whilst many column inches were written and many conversations were had on that, January also saw tvOS 16.3 with the introduction to TV app library fixes and Apple's home architecture re-released. I think, from my perspective, I think it's the same for you, Devon. Our Apple homes have become far more reliable this year.
Yeah, I would say so. I was one of those brave few who installed the new architecture like day one before it even got pulled. So I've been on it, I guess, as long as just about anybody. And I found it to be very reliable, especially with newer technologies like Thread, which I'm using with some smart bulbs and my HomePod minis. It's all been pretty rock solid for me. I'm loving my HomeKit setup for sure.
Well, in March, we saw 16.4, which brought one of my favorite features, one of my most underrated accessibility features, dim flashing lights, which not only came to tvOS but also came to iOS. And we also had some more Apple TV library fixes, this time for loading fixes for large libraries. I did an overview at the beginning of the year of how the TV app worked with large libraries across different platforms, with the Apple TV kind of lagging behind on performance. That was fixed and is one of my big thank you moments to the Apple TV team this year. In April, we also got the addition of a live button on live sports, which took you straight to the live action of the moment. Alongside the ability to pick your local commentary. I know this is something that was greatly appreciated by especially MLB Friday Night Baseball viewers, so that was very, very cool. With the addition of tvOS 16.5 in May, we saw the introduction of multi-view, which would allow for multiple sports broadcasts to be viewed at one time in a grid format. Really, really cool. Only available, however, to Apple's sports offerings. And what we hope is in 2024, we'll see that expand to news broadcasts, maybe even live TV broadcasts, and more. Definitely feels like the futuristic way of channel hopping. We also got Thread 1.3 support, and this was all just before WWDC, where we expected to hear about Final Cut Pro coming to the iPad, but that happened just a tad earlier in May. I know this was a highlight for you, Devon.
Definitely. I'm a lover of film and TV, and I love my iPad, so to be able to put those two things together to give creative professionals the ability to edit on the go and take this product that's been so beloved on the Mac and put it on the iPad, I think it's just incredible. I had a chance to play with it a little bit. I don't edit a ton of videos, but I have edited a few things on Final Cut Pro, and it really is just a wonderful experience the way they've translated it over to the iPad. It's just so well done. And everything I hear about Final Cut Pro from people who use it day in and day out, they have nothing but good things to say about it. It's continued to improve throughout the year. I think it really is just a huge win for creative professionals, and especially creative professionals who love their iPads. And of course, the fact that Apple released Final Cut Pro for iPad in May meant they were clearing the decks for a very packed WWDC in June.
Yes, my first in-person WWDC, where we got not only the introduction of Apple Vision Pro, which again we will be covering on this very podcast as we move closer to launch, but we also saw the announcement of tvOS 17, and I think it was beyond any expectations that we had this year for Apple TV from a software perspective. Announced in tvOS 17 were FaceTime and continuity camera, which absolutely blew my mind. We got the ability to locate our Siri remotes on our iOS devices. We also got a newly redesigned control center, which I'll be honest, I'm not sure if I am completely on board with just yet, but the functionality is really, really cool. We had 6 icons on the home screen, kind of accommodating more for the bigger screens in our lives, alongside custom plans for Apple Fitness Plus, Dolby Vision 8.1 support, the ability to hear those mumbles in our favorite shows with enhanced dialogue, alongside something I never thought was going to come to the Apple TV, VPN support, and finally, conversation awareness using AirPods and spatial audio via shared AirPods. Of course, we've had lots and lots of thoughts over tvOS 17 leading up to the release in September, and then later my tvOS 17 review over at Mac Stories, which is definitely a personal highlight for me this year. But even in September, we weren't at the end of discussing Apple TV from a software perspective.
No, not at all. As we've talked about several times before on the show, updates to tvOS don't always come on that regular update cycle, starting in June and ending in September. We get some really nice additions towards the end of the year usually as well. And this year was no different. In October, that enhanced dialogue feature that came with tvOS 17 was extended from the second generation HomePods back to the HomePod Mini and the first generation HomePod, which is something that I very much appreciate because I'm still a user of the first gen HomePod, and I live with enhanced dialogue turned on now because I can never quite make out exactly what people are saying. I'm constantly having to go back and, say, what did they say? Turn on the captions, figure that out. And especially with a little one who's napping in the next room, it helps out so much to be able to turn the volume down but still be able to understand what people are saying and not have to worry about music or action sequences blowing out my speakers, right? And it also just speaks to Apple's commitment to the HomePod, including the first gen HomePod, which is getting up there in age at this point, but it continues to receive great software enhancements and updates even to this day, and that's something we love to see. And then this month, Apple gave us another huge surprise, a big redesign of the TV app, including that new sidebar that we've talked about endlessly here on the podcast. They also did some tweaking to the navigation on the TV app for Mac, iPad, and iPhone, and brought that new sidebar to the TV app on other platforms as well, your streaming sticks, your smart TVs. So if you use the TV app on any platform, I'm sure you noticed it looks quite a bit different now. For better and for worse in different ways. A lot of consolidation on Apple's part of trying to move people over from the iTunes store to the TV app for purchasing film and TV shows. And we lost some features along the way. We still got our fingers crossed to see those come back early next year. But yeah, huge update to the TV app in December alongside support for Dolby Atmos in SharePlay. Apple just really kept us on our toes this year, Sigmund. We never knew around the corner what was going to be coming, but looking at this list, I mean, just about every month this year, there was some new functionality coming to tvOS to make our devices work even better for us. And it's just really cool in aggregate. It's sometimes you don't notice it as it's incremental, but looking back on it as a whole, it has been a huge year for tvOS. And the way our devices work for us now, thinking just a year ago about all these things that we would be missing if we went back to that time, I don't know. I kind of feel like my TV was broken without a lot of this stuff. So it really is just cool to see how far tvOS has come in the past year.
Definitely a lot of things ticked off of our wish list from this past year as well. But I got to say, a feature that feels brand new but isn't, that I just wanted to very quickly mention was SharePlay. Mm-hmm. With the introduction of FaceTime and continuity camera, it feels like a feature that my family can use with me, especially now we have the ability also in this last update to pick up phone calls on our Apple TV with a connected camera. But I think it's time for us to kind of pick out our very favourite tvOS editions this year. What have you got for us, Devon?
I think my favorite edition has to be, as you just mentioned, continuity camera. It's one of those features. It's just so many different things that Apple's doing that just come together in such a magnificent and seamless way. All the work they've done on the iPhone cameras over the years and the iPad cameras as well, because this works with iPad. Then creating those wireless handoff connections between devices so that you can seamlessly connect them and transfer data from one to the other, including a live stream from your camera. I mean, it's just incredible. I've wanted to be able to FaceTime on my TV for many years. It just makes so much sense to be able to have your loved ones up on that big screen as you're chatting with them, especially in scenarios where there's multiple people talking. And if you've got a little one who is moving around and doesn't sit quite still, and it's not going to sit in front of a laptop, right, and have a full-on conversation, they can be playing in the floor and chat with grandma and grandpa, right, and just have those conversations. It's just such a great addition to tvOS. You called this, when continuity camera was announced for the Mac, that the other device in Apple's lineup that ships without a camera, of course, is the Apple TV. And we don't need necessarily camera hardware built into the Apple TV box now because we can just connect our iPhones or our iPads. It's been fun to see the way that different people have adjusted their setups to accommodate this new feature. Of course, there's stands that you can buy to set on your entertainment center to prop up your phone. We've seen people rig up car mounts to the back of their TVs for like that perfect angle on their living room. It's just so cool to see. And of course, continuity camera doesn't just work with Apple's FaceTime. It also works with Apple Music Sing for your fun karaoke nights with all those awesome effects over your video and your lyrics. And it also is available to third-party developers like Zoom and WebEx, which I think is going to be perfect for conference rooms, where traditionally you'd have to hook up a laptop to the TV in your conference room and do your call that way. A lot of corporate offices and schools already have the Apple TV built into their conferencing solution. And now you can just hook up an iPhone or an iPad camera to that Apple TV and do your call that way. So there are a lot of really practical applications for this beyond just talking with friends and family. I think we're going to continue to see developers find new uses for this. Maybe there could be some kind of gaming angle on continuity camera as well. We'll have to wait and see, but it opens up a whole world of possibilities for Apple TV, and it's awesome to see and really well implemented too. I'll say it's just seamless. It's so well done, and it's that kind of magic that only Apple can really do. And I mean, who else out there would have thought to come up with a solution for video conferencing in your living room using your phone in this way? It's just so cool to see. So that's my tvOS edition for the year, continuity camera.
Well, from a world of possibilities in the living room to opening ourselves up to a world of different shows and films from our favourite services, my favourite addition in tvOS this year is the VPN support that came. I thought it was a wild surprise. I actually didn't realize that VPN support had been added until someone sent me a private message whilst I was running about in Cupertino at WWDC this year. It's a highlight for me for a number of reasons. First off, I think it's quite obvious what people want VPN support for on Apple TV. But also, I thought it was really interesting to see that alongside the likes of NordVPN and ExpressVPN and all of the VPN services that we hear being advertised on podcasts all the time, there's some really unique things being done with this VPN support, which we will get into in a little bit through the likes of Tailscale. But alongside the addition a couple of years ago of captive network support, it now means that not only can you use an Apple TV in a dorm room or in a hotel room whilst you're traveling, you're also able to watch the shows and films that you would at home, which I think is really, really important. So very, very happy to see VPN support come to tvOS this year. My favourite addition beyond continuity camera. You got there first.
I did want to give a shout out to my honorable mention for addition to tvOS this year, and that's the TV app redesign. I've been spending more and more time with the redesigned TV app, getting more and more used to it, and I'd say that it just keeps growing on me. I was impressed with it when I first saw it, but as I continue to use it, I find it very intuitive to use. I really enjoy that sidebar, and one side effect of that I wasn't anticipating is I'm spending a lot more time in that apps and services section than I ever did in the past, exploring these services that I pay for, but I don't always catch what's new and what they're promoting. Because it's so front and center there, not buried 16 rows deep on the homepage, I'm spending more time there and finding some cool stuff that I didn't know was out there. So yeah, I think that sidebar, again, still needs some improvements. I'm not saying it's perfect or that it's done, but I think it's a big win, and I'm happy that they got it in at the end of this year. And I would say it's my runner-up for best tvOS edition for this year.
I've always been a big, big fan of being able to share an experience with someone without disturbing other people in the home. And so I've always loved the ability to have two pairs of AirPods be connected to the Apple TV, but the thing that was missing was spatial audio. So it felt like, okay, now I'm sharing it. I don't quite get the same experience that I would do if I was watching on my own. Well, now not only do you have spatial audio, but should you want to talk to each other, instead of having to kind of pretend and nod and go, oh yeah, I totally understood what you were saying, I'm watching this show. Now you can actually hear them because AirPods have conversational awareness. And I think it's something that may not work so well when you're out and about. I know a lot of people weren't particularly keen on this new mode, but in the home it works flawlessly. So that's my honorable mention to end our favorite tvOS editions this year. But on to our favorite tvOS app this year. I'll start with an app that I think you used more than I did at the beginning of this year, in all honesty. But by the end of this year, I think I've almost ditched the standalone YouTube app at this point.
Yeah, of course, you're talking about Play by Marcos Tanaka, my favorite tvOS app and my pick for tvOS app of the year. Play is a watch later app for all kinds of different video services, but especially for YouTube is what it's optimized for. On the TV, what you do is you can go into your library and see the videos that you saved, see the way you've organized them with tags, and play them back with a deep link straight into the YouTube app so that you're not distracted by any recommendations or even your subscription box or anything like that. You're just watching the video that you want to see and not falling down any rabbit holes, which is wonderful. Play 2.0 came out just last month, and most of the new features are really on the iPhone, iPad, and Mac. But because the app is one cohesive experience, it does still enhance the experience on the Apple TV, because in the Play app on iPhone, iPad, and Mac, you can bring up this new channels view, which is a list of just the channels you've chosen to follow in Play, all their latest videos. And so you can quickly save those to your library without even having to open the YouTube app. Then you open Play on the Apple TV, and you can watch those back immediately. It's really well done. I love the design of Play. It just continues to get better and better. And I am so happy with the progress that Play has made this year. And it just makes me happy every time I see it up on my Apple TV screen. And here's a hint for those of you who use Play but haven't tried this: put it on your top shelf, because it also includes top shelf support where you can see your saved videos up at the top of the screen without even having to open the app, and you can launch them straight from there as well. It's a really well done app and a great citizen on the Apple TV, and it's my app of the year.
I think we are very, very close in our kind of theme for app of the year this year. Deep linking is definitely the theme, because my app of the year this year is TV Launcher by Adam Foote. It is an app which brings all of your live TV channels that you know and love into one convenient launcher across Apple platforms, not just the Apple TV, but everywhere else. And what I love about the implementation on Apple TV are the ability to be able to switch regions and the ability to jump straight into a live broadcast through an EPG that has always been lacking on Apple TV. There are so many new additions this year. It's hard to pick any number of them out because their implementation this year was so seamless. But yeah, TV Launcher is my pick of tvOS app of the year this year, mainly for the reason that it fills a gap that Apple have yet to. Live TV, it's huge still. I know we're all used to watching on demand when we want to, but there is an element of the TV experience that still exists and is yet to be catered by Apple. And with thanks to developers like Adam Foote, there's kind of no need, at least for the time being. So that is my Apple TV app of the year. In terms of honorable mentions, as mentioned previously, with VPN support, Tailscale is a VPN app that allows your Apple TV to actually be an exit node, meaning that you can route all of your traffic through the Apple TV, even in the background whilst you're watching something. It can also work as your typical VPN where you're changing locations and everything else. But even better still is that for a limited number of connections, Tailscale is completely free. So I've really enjoyed experimenting with Tailscale this year. I'm not the only one. I know you have too.
Yeah, after hearing your experiments with Tailscale, I decided to try it myself. And honestly, I was skeptical that it could be as easy as you made it sound, Sigmund, and I was proven completely wrong. It really is as simple as you made it out to be. You create your account, you download the app on your devices, and they're connected. I mean, that really is it. And it's incredible how simple and straightforward it is. I do not love getting into all the nitty gritty of networking. That is not something that brings me joy. And I think that's part of the reason why I held off on trying this out for so long, but I've been so impressed with Tailscale. I've got my free account set up to link my devices. I'm using it especially for remoting into my Mac when I'm away from my network, and it works great for that. So can't recommend Tailscale enough. It's a great pick for an honorable mention for Apple TV App of the Year. My honorable mention, I want to shout out Disney Plus. They made me a believer this year. I've been a subscriber to Disney Plus since the service launched, but I've watched with some hesitation some of the business decisions that have been made at Disney, as I know many of us have. And when they announced that they were going to be bringing Hulu content into the Disney app, I think my comment was that they were maxing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I've really been proven wrong in that sense as the beta has rolled out. I'm actually really happy with the implementation. The way that all of the Hulu content that I watch, at least, has been consolidated into the Disney Plus app. I can watch it all in one app, and I really do enjoy using Disney Plus on the Apple TV. I think it's a good app and one that I enjoy using. So I wanted to shout them out, not necessarily for any technical update that they've made this year, but for the content and the way they pulled off consolidating Hulu into the Disney Plus app, even in this beta. I think it's really well done. Now, before we move on to the next category segment, I think we should take a moment for In Memoriam. As is often done at award shows, let's take a moment of silence for the TV and movies apps on tvOS. The icons are still there, but they just redirect you back to the TV app for purchasing. And we just want to thank those apps for their years of service and all the great memories and functionalities that they brought to us.
Way to bring the energy down, Devon. Well, you know what I have been energized with? That is Apple TV's games this year. There have been a number of incredible games that I just want to quickly mention. Samba de Amigo, Party to Go. I don't know if you played this. It's so much fun. And it's ridiculous that I'm into this. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Splintered Fate was fantastic, has a great multiplayer element to it as well, and some great voice acting. For your conventional games, NBA 2K14, again, another great outing for the NBA franchise on Apple TV. But for the complete weirdness and bombasticness of it all, What the Car is the follow-up to What the Golf, and it is just as bonkers. Loved every moment of it. I don't think there is actually any form of media that made me laugh as much as What the Car this year. But my Apple TV game of the year, also on Apple Arcade, is Sonic Dream Team. It's a full-formed 3D platformer on Apple TV, exclusive to Apple TV and Apple Arcade as well, where you get to control Sonic and all of his friends. Kind of reminded me of Super Mario World 3D and brought me back to the days of N64, because I never really played a 3D Sonic game up until now, and there's some speed in this game as well, so highly recommend Sonic Dream Team on Apple TV. That's my game of the year.
Very cool. That's a great pick and one I've been meaning to try out. I'm going to add that to the top of my list of games to try over the holiday break. For me, the best Apple TV game of the year has to be Riptide Renegade Plus, which came to Apple Arcade this year. It's a water sports game. I don't know what you call these vehicles, Sigmund. I call them jet skis. But they're like an ATV that you ride on the water. You race them in Riptide Renegade. It has a story mode, but it's kind of funny in that every conflict, of course, is solved by a race. And so you have a little bit of back and forth, and then it's, okay, let's race to settle this. And then you have to win the race to move on in the story. But it's a lot of fun. It's got a lot of variety in terms of the courses, but also as well as different types of races that you can do. It's not just straightforward like Mario Kart style racing. There's also contests of doing tricks and earning points that way. There's rounds where you have to go through certain paths and hit checkpoints that you can't miss, and so it's about steering and reacting quickly and things like that. There's a lot of variety to the game. There's a lot of replayability, and they actually just recently added Game Center achievements, which means, of course, I have to go back through and replay the game again to earn all those medals to show off in Game Center. But it's one of those games that I find very zen. As much as it keeps me on the edge of my seat, I'm trying to get all the button mashes just right. It's also one of those ones that I just get into a mode where I'm just completely focused on the task at hand. I'm not thinking about anything else at all. And for me, that's not something I come across very often. And when I do, I really latch onto it. So if you haven't tried Riptide Renegade Plus, it's a part of Apple Arcade. It's a joy to play on the Apple TV, especially with those beautiful water effects. It really is a lot of fun.
And I know when you get into a game, you get into a game full on, because I just looked at Game Center the other day and you've 100%ed Jetpack Joyride 2, which is bemusing to me, but amusing to me all the same. Now, away from games, because it has been a big year for film in 2023, no end of year lists can be definitive. And as you'll see with other very different lists, there was truly something for everyone in 2023 when it came to movies. Film is often a way to escape, to reflect upon ourselves, and to catch moments in time. Sadly, war continues to be all around us once again in 2023, and none better reflect that than the likes of 20 Days in Mariupol, a horrifying eyewitness account of the beginnings of Russian invasion in Ukraine. Jonathan Glazer's The Zone of Interest looked at the joy in other people's suffering with a Nazi commandant trying to build a dream life for his family near the Auschwitz concentration camp. And lastly, Steve McQueen's Occupied City was a 4-hour tour de force where the past collided with the future in an excavation of the Nazi occupation of Amsterdam and a journey from World War II to recent years of pandemic and protest, and a life-affirming reflection on memory, time, and what's to come. This year was also blessed by stories of hope, with our relationships to one another explored through music, thanks to Flora and her son, through John Carney's Sundance hit turned Apple original film, or Bill Poland's Dreamin' Wild with Casey Affleck and Walter Goggins as two brothers relaunching their 1979 album in 2023 for one last throw of the music career dice. There was also deeper questions asked of us and our relationships to each other and our world through younger eyes, thanks to the beautiful Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, about an 11-year-old Margaret moving to a new town as she starts to contemplate everything about life, friendship, and adolescence. And then we also had the epic The Eight Mountains, about two young Italian boys who spend their childhoods together in a secluded alpine village, roaming the surrounding peaks and valleys before their paths diverged. Sci-fi, as sharp as The Creator and Godzilla Minus One, showed what can be made on a fraction of the budget, teasing a more sustainable future for film, as well as we saw some big budget films like Beau is Afraid and They Clone Tyrone, showing studios are now willing to take risks for the sake of art, favouring stories depicting various states of mental health and identity, once ignored in favour of explosions and long-standing franchise. The classic con movie Sharper was one of this year's biggest surprises, whilst the return of Hayao Miyazaki with the release of The Boy and the Heron offered the type of beauty we expect from Studio Ghibli's co-founder. Across the Spider-Verse was also a dazzling animated spectacle that demanded us to be the superhero in each of our respective stories. And lastly, Still, a Michael J. Fox movie, celebrated a short kid from a Canadian Army base who became an international pop culture darling of the 1980s, and later in life, one of the most important and awe-inspiring voices in a generation following a life altered by a stunning diagnosis. These are just a bunch of our honourable mentions for the year in film, but before our personal top 5 films for the year that has been, we have some listener feedback.
Yeah, we got some love for Godzilla Minus One from our listeners. First up, Justin Farrell on Threads said, I was absolutely floored by Godzilla Minus One. It obviously feels ridiculous that a Godzilla movie, like the 70th one, could be so good, but it's genuinely one of the best movies of the last 10 years. I cried multiple times and can see why it's getting the accolades that it has. And then Jonathan Ruiz followed up on Mastodon with his own positive things to say about Godzilla Minus One, saying it was one of my favorite movies of the year. I liked it so much I saw it twice in theaters. I've always had a sweet spot for Godzilla, but this movie is more than a monster movie. It tells the story of a kamikaze pilot during the end of World War II, showing how life was for Japan after the war in a really thoughtful perspective. It's one of the only Godzilla movies that focuses on the human characters and tells a heartfelt story. There's plenty of amazing scenes where you see the destruction Godzilla is capable of, but the movie as a whole is incredibly well done. I can't wait to buy it and watch it again. I'll say any movie that inspires people to go to the theater multiple times to see it, and then they're ready to spend more money on it, that has to be a good film. So I have not yet seen Godzilla Minus One, but it is definitely on my list to check out. I've heard amazing things about it. Of course, this was my introduction to the MonsterVerse this year with Monarch on Apple TV+, but I'm ready to dive deeper in it and see an alternate take on Godzilla with Godzilla Minus One.
Well, you only have 37 films to watch before you get there. Let's talk about the films we did watch this year with our top 5 for each. I know we have very, very different takes on films. I'm really excited for this. As we said before, there was something in 2023 for everyone. And I think that's going to be shown in these lists. So your number 5 2023 film of the year is...
Super Mario Brothers, the movie.
Okay.
I don't know how many people are going to have this film on their top lists for the year, but for me, it was something that I enjoyed so much. This one comes from Illumination, who you may know from the Minions films, and this one kind of follows in that vein in that it has a very broad appeal. It's meant for families, but it's one that, of course, parents can watch along as well. I'd say it's a little less silly, maybe, than some of the Minion movies. It leans less on some of that slapstick style humor, but it's definitely still there. Now, for me, this is my childhood hero brought to life. I was obsessed with Mario growing up. I started with Super Mario 64 on the Nintendo 64, and I think I've bought just about every Mario title since then. I love every iteration of the character, and I've always thought it would be cool to see him in a movie as well. Of course, there have been attempts at adapting Super Mario Brothers to film and TV in the past with, I'd say, varying degrees of success. This film really, I think, just blew it out of the water. It was a financial success. It really proved that people are willing to go back to the theaters to see the right film. And it shows the impact, I think, of making a movie that appeals not only to kids, but also to their parents as well. Because there's a lot of nostalgia play in this film. Mario's a character that has such a rich history going all the way back to Jumpman in the Donkey Kong days, and there's actually a reference in the film to Jumpman, Mario's origins, but there's so many different little Easter eggs throughout his history in this film. The film does so while also bringing his story into the modern era, not only in terms of animation, but also in terms of the themes and character dynamics, and kind of making this story of a plumber from Brooklyn, which Mario has always been, and taking it from maybe saving the damsel in distress to working alongside the princess to save the kingdom. I really love the portrayal of Peach by Anya Taylor-Joy. I thought she was a powerful character, a good example, of course, for young girls. And I love the dynamic between her and Mario where she's training him and introducing him to this world. Really just a wonderful film, great for all ages. If you like Mario, if you ever played a Mario game and enjoyed it, I think you'll enjoy this film. It's my number 5 film of the year.
I think you're going to be able to tell that we are going different directions here, because my number 5 pick for the year is Dream Scenario. This is kind of unknown to a lot of people. This is Nicolas Cage, who in recent years has been turned into a bit of a meme, but there's far more to him than a repeated gif or a shallow caption, and His latest project sees Nicolas Cage at his cagiest in a film about viral fame. It's directed by Christopher Borgli, and the film sees Cage play a dull academic who somehow finds himself inserted in everyone's dreams, only to become a viral sensation on social media before those dreams suddenly become violent, and he's cancelled by the same people that kind of made him the celebrity that he was. What's interesting about this is we see Professor Matthews go from a shy recluse to basically enacting his own terrible destiny to become a cross between a Freddy Krueger from A Nightmare on Elm Street and Leonard Zelig, the comedian non-entity in the Woody Allen comedy who insinuates himself into every historical situation of the 20th century. This is a film that also starred Michael Cera, Tim Meadows, and Julianne Nicholson, and was produced by Ari Aster, whose own film just got pipped by this more, I'd say, universally approached story. Highly, highly recommend Dream Scenario, and of course, who released it but A24.
I think the divergence between our list is going to continue with my next pick. Number 4 for me this year was The Marvels. This was one I know it had very split reactions when it was in theaters. Critic reactions were honestly not super positive, and I think the audience score started to rise up as it rolled out. But for me, The Marvels was just an enjoyable MCU adventure. It wasn't trying to be anything more than it was. It didn't build too much into the whole world-building aspect of the franchise, which I think people are a little bit tired of. You know, the MCU's become a little bit of a soap opera in that you kind of have to keep up with each element of it to really understand what's happening. And this was really just a self-contained story about these 3 women. I appreciate it as the first female superhero team to lead their own film in the MCU. Of course, Captain Marvel was the first female superhero with her own title movie. And so it kind of continues to push the boundaries there. Is it unfortunate that those boundaries exist in 2023? Yeah, of course it is. But it's good to see those boundaries continue to be pushed. I'll just say the highlight for me was Iman Vellani, who of course plays Miss Marvel. I'll say she's a delight, and she's the future of the franchise. She's just a gem of an actress. The character that she plays is so cool. She's this Avengers super fan who suddenly finds herself thrust into these Avengers level scenarios and fighting alongside her hero, Captain Marvel. It's just very cool. It's a fun film. If you fell off the Marvel wagon for a while and you don't want to have to watch 6 episodes of a TV show to kind of catch up on what's happening, you can just jump into this one and watch it just for fun. It really is a fun MCU romp.
Very cool. This isn't one that I have not checked out yet, so I'm looking forward to checking this out when the time comes. Hopefully not too far away from heading its way to Disney Plus and ready to stream. You made a really good point in terms of strong female characters. I think this year has been incredibly important for strong female characters, even with films that from the outset look like they're male-led, but aren't. More on that a little bit later. One film that is specifically female-led, my number 4 for the year, is Anatomy of a Fall. It stars Sandra Huller, who compels as an author accused of murder in Justin Treat's Palme d'Or-winning psycho thriller about a suspicious death whose only reliable witness happens to be blind. This has not been put forward for international film by France. Instead, I'm hopeful to see Anatomy of a Fall in the Best Picture nominations before its cruelly forgotten time. German actor Sandra Huller, who plays a novelist who is accused of killing her husband by pushing him out of the window of their pine chalet, is absolutely incredible in this film. This is kind of like a real-time depiction of someone being picked apart to the point where they're not sure what's true and what they are kind of re-remembering, and also the ability of the press and everyone around you to distort memory and the relationships around you as well. that you hold so dear. The film takes us through the legal minutiae of the ensuing investigation, but is more interested in having us consider the slippery and abstract nature of truth. And again, another heavy one, but highly recommend Anatomy of a Fall. If you're into courtroom dramas especially, I think this is going to be something that you may have overlooked up until now, but you shouldn't.
Very cool. This was one I hadn't heard of. Thanks for putting it on my radar. I'm definitely going to check this one out. My next pick, I think, has maybe a little more color than Anatomy of a Fall based on your description. My number 3 movie of the year is Barbie. Of course, led by Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling as Barbie and Ken, both of whom were phenomenal. When I think of Barbie and Ken now, I'm not going to be able to think of anyone other. They were both just wonderful performers in this film, and I think they had great chemistry between one another as well. This movie is a smart twist on a beloved childhood toy that so many people have such a strong connection to. I think one reason why we haven't seen a Barbie feature film on this level in the past is because it's one that's just so hard to get right. So many people feel so strongly about this toy because they grew up playing with Barbie, right? And Barbie means so many different things to so many different people, which the film kind of touches on. But I think they did a really good job of really getting at the core of what Barbie's supposed to be and what Barbie should mean, and really reclaiming Barbie as an icon of female empowerment in the way that she was always meant to be, but maybe kind of lost that narrative somewhere along the way. The film really is just all about female empowerment, about giving women the space to be their full selves in the world. I think that's a positive message that people need to hear. And using this toy that's so beloved to get that message across, I think is great. It's subversive in a lot of ways. I think people were expecting it to be maybe a little more family friendly than it was. And it's very obvious from the start that it's not meant for children. This is not a movie meant for people who are currently playing with Barbies. This is for people who played with Barbies 10, 15, 20 years ago to kind of reconnect with the toy. And I think put it in a different light, one more positive and more fitting, I think, for our modern era. But I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a lot of fun. And now that it's streaming on Max, I think I'm going to be watching it again over the holiday break to kind of just re-experience it. I'm especially looking forward to getting back to Michael Cera's performance as Alan, who just really cracked me up.
I gotta say, what I did like about Barbie and the whole idea of it was to see a company like Mattel to put a lot of trust in having a movie made that wasn't afraid to self-criticize as well. And I thought Greta Gerwig did a really good job of finding that balance. Of course, there was another half to the Barbenheimer double bill that took the world by storm over the summer. And that is, of course, Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer, which is my number 3. Christopher Nolan's account of the physicist who led the Manhattan Project and captured the most agonizing of success stories. The film about a bomb that did the exact opposite at the box office. Christopher Nolan cemented his movie Midas status by giving us a complicated 3-hour biopic of morally scarred atomic bomb inventor Robert Oppenheimer, and making the sort of money usually reserved for films with spandex-clad movie stars and a lot of awful CGI. This was truly special. Superb performances throughout from Cillian Murphy, Emily Blunt, Robert Downey Jr. and Ben Safdie, amongst others. Kind of in 3 different acts and almost 3 different films. The final act, which I actually thought was the end of the film, then turned into a courtroom drama that played out. And honestly, just the realization of what his invention actually caused in the world is one of the scariest scenes I've seen, not from a visual standpoint, but just the way it made me feel. The absolute horror in his eyes in relation to the clapping and applause of knowing what a invention like his could actually bring onto fellow humans was scary. I also thought this film came at kind of the perfect time for me personally when I'm thinking about atomic bombs in the news, as well as global cyber threats. And of course, we had the big conversation this year about living in the age of artificial intelligence and the dangers of artificial intelligence as well, which got brought up a lot in the conversation surrounding this film. Highly, highly recommend. It's in the TV app right now, climbing back up the charts as we get closer and closer to awards season.
Well, speaking of topping the charts, my number 2 film of the year is one I just saw this past weekend and completely upended my list. I had to completely rework it after seeing this film because it was just that good. Of course, I'm speaking about Taylor Swift, the Eras Tour film, now available to rent for $19.89 in the TV app. This 3-hour movie is, of course, a recording of Taylor's shows, I believe 3 shows performed in California. Really not that long ago. This film was turned around so quickly. I'm really impressed with it. But she's been on tour all year. What a year that Taylor Swift has had. Of course, named Time's Person of the Year just for her domination of so many different industries this year, but especially this tour that she's taken to so many different places. And of course, just an unimaginable number of people gathering to see her performances. It's incredible. And to get to see it on film and to really capture such a performance, such a moment in time, this film really does a great job of it. The show is a celebration of Taylor's career, but it really is more than that. It's just a joyful experience. You're seeing someone's life play out before your eyes. You're seeing a creative genius just re-explore work that started when they were a teenager, and now looking back on it, a decade and a half later, and not shy away from it, but reclaim it in a way that I think is so powerful. That's really been one of the themes of Taylor Swift's career the past couple of years, is reclaiming her work, taking control through these re-recordings, the Taylor versions of her albums. And that's something that I applaud. I think of all the things that Taylor Swift has created, and she's created some wonderful things, this is her masterpiece. This is the culmination of everything that she's made, and it really is just a wonderful thing to see on screen. This is the end of part 1 of what is undeniably an incredible career, and I really can't even imagine where she goes from here. I think this is her peak, at least of what we've seen so far. And there's been so many moments that I've thought Taylor Swift has hit her peak, and she just keeps raising the bar. So I'm sure she'll continue to do so, but I just can't imagine how she's going to do so after the Eras Tour. It's really a fun film. I do want to shout out a little bit of the behind-the-scenes production. She brought a lot of the production in-house, including distribution, not going through one of the studios, which was really impressive. And part of the reason that she did that was the ongoing strikes. She actually worked it out with SAG-AFTRA to have this film approved by them by adopting their temporary contract that they were negotiating with. And I thought that was a classy move. And there is an Apple TV Plus connection to this film that I wanted to share. Cameron Saunders, who is one of Taylor's background dancers, one who really stole the show, I think, during the film. He was also in Spirited. So kind of cool. If you want to see his work over on Apple TV Plus, you can check out Spirited and see him there as well. So that's my pick. Taylor Swift, the Eras Tour. I didn't get to see it in person, but I feel like I have now that I've got to watch the film. And definitely one that I'll be watching again. Hopefully it'll be coming to streaming before too long.
Very unconventional, which I like. Kind of sticking to the stage for a moment, my number 2 pick this year actually is the debut from playwright Celine Song, and it's Past Lives, about 2 people whose lives intertwine again after years apart. It's both delicate and sophisticated, but also simple and direct, and it merges telecoms in social media, helping a Korean couple rekindle a formative romance, with her having emigrated before things could really blossom. Is tender, wistful, never judgmental, with an electric performance from the morning show's Greta Lee, alongside U2 and John Magaro. Highly, highly recommend this. Set in New York. Again, it's another film from A24, but this is really, really special. It's subtle. It's not bombastic in any way. And I think even with the soundtrack being very, very carefully chosen and curated, there's something quite special about this film that I don't think really has been explored since the dawn of social media. There's also, I think, another story that hasn't really been touched before with regard to the immigrant story and moving away, maybe not at the right time, and wondering how things could have been. But more than either of those, what I think really touched me about this was how it explored relationships in a way that when you're in a relationship, you will always have the part of the person that you've lived with, that you've grown with. But there's always going to be a part of a person that's locked away that you won't know fully. And I think that's the beauty of each of us as individuals. And it really asks that question, not only through conversations, but through actions. Heartbreaking ending. And I genuinely think that this has a outside chance at winning Best Film this year at the Oscars, which sounds absolutely insane when we think about the likes of Oppenheimer and what we're about to talk about. But yeah, an absolutely amazing, very human feeling film that really just focuses in on our connection to one another and to the lives that sometimes we have to leave behind.
Well, that's a great pick. And I think we've put together some really wonderful lists so far, Sigmund, really highlighting some great films from 2023. But we're in agreement here that there's only one film that can take the number one spot. For our number one film of the year, we have jointly chosen Killers of the Flower Moon, from director Martin Scorsese, starring Leonardo DiCaprio, Lily Gladstone, and Robert De Niro. The film tells the story of mysterious murders of members of the Osage Nation and a secret plot to steal their fortunes.
You know, you got nice color skin. What color would you say that is?
My color.
Osage. Their land has oil on it. Money flows freely here now.
I do love that money, sir.
This wealth should come to us. Their time is over.
When this money started coming, we should have known it came with something else. We're still warriors.
I ought to kill these white men who killed my family. I need you here.
I am right here.
Well, of course, we had to have a clip because this was the film that I feel like defined my year when it came to movie-going experiences. I got to see this premiere at London Film Festival, and just a few short weeks afterwards, I saw this on general release with my mother at BFI's London IMAX screen. Both times, I was absolutely blown away by this film. The craftsmanship of this film was incredible. The soundtrack from the late Robbie Robertson has been heralded as one of the best for many, many years and seeing many nominations. But the acting here was truly special. We're seeing Lily Gladstone, who really stole the film and is likely to be the first ever Native American to be nominated for an Oscar for her performance. Robert De Niro with another, I feel, career-defining performance, even this late into his career. And Leonardo DiCaprio as this kind of tortured soul who initially is well-intentioned, but I feel like is easily turned and becomes as ruthless as his protege uncle. This is a really difficult film. I've got to say, the synopsis of Killers of the Flower Moon probably put people off a ton in going to the cinemas to see it alongside its running time. And maybe more so the idea of confronting one of America's most damning historical stories about displacement, corruption, and genocide is probably another reason, and that maybe says a lot more than the film does itself with regard to where we are today. For me, the 3.5 hours flew by both times. I have since seen it a third time on digital. Yes, I couldn't hold out. This is also the second in the list from cinematographer Rodrigo Prieto, who also was the cinematographer behind Barbie. Two drastically different styles. What made it your number one film of the year?
It's not often that I walk out of a theater and I'm just left speechless. Usually, you walk out of the theater and you want to talk with other people about your thoughts on the film, your opinion. Did you like it? Did you not like it? Boy, that was a long one, or whatever it was. This film, I walked out and I really just felt like I needed to be quiet and alone for a while to really absorb what happened. It's something I say often, but it really is true when I watch these stories that are based on true events. I am reminded that what we're seeing, of course, are characters, but these characters represent real people who went through these very real experiences. And when I dwell on the reality of this story and what happened to these people, I still get emotional. This was not a story that I was aware of. Something that happened, honestly, within a few hours of where I live, and not a story that gets shared often. This isn't something you're going to hear about, in the highlight reel of American history. It's just not something that we like to dwell on. But it's such an important story. It feels very disconnected from the world that we live in, but really it tells us a lot about human nature and the way we relate with one another when we aren't careful and when we give in to our worst instincts. The journey of Ernest from being this enterprising young man, really just looking to make a living and start a family and, has such a positive view on life, the way he's corrupted by his uncle and just devolves into this almost a gangster type persona, just, whacking people off just because he was ordered to make a few bucks. It really is wild to watch, but it just speaks to, I think, something inside of us, the propensity to cause pain in other people. It's a power that we have and one that we need to be aware of. And we can't do anything, obviously, about what happened in this story because it's in the past, but I think we can learn from it. And I hope we do. And I hope we do better. And unfortunately, we still see atrocities around the world happening to groups of people who are trying to be shut out and taken advantage of and eradicated in ways that are disturbing. And I think stories like this, being reminded of them, hopefully they inspire us to stand up, to do something about these things, and to, most of all, protect our own hearts, keep ourselves from giving in to that hate and just that callousness that we see on screen. So, like you said, not an easy film to watch, one that it's not going to be like a happy family film night with popcorn and you all chat about it afterwards. This is one I think you're really going to have to sit with, but it is well worth watching, and I hope people do.
Killers of the Flower Moon, now available on VOD for rental or for purchase on the TV app. Well, I know what you're thinking. What about the best in TV for 2023? Well, we'll be divulging our top picks alongside your feedback and a preview for the year ahead in Apple Originals and TV in general when we return in 2 weeks' time. Obviously, we can't let 2023 go without a roundup of the latest news from around the world of Apple TV. And we begin with some release news. The Big Door Prize has set its Season 2 premiere date for February 2nd on Apple TV+. Season 2 will further explore the questions of a small town turned upside down when a mysterious machine appears, promising to reveal everyone's true potential. The release news doesn't stop there, though, as Deadline reports that Project Artemis will debut in theatres on July 12, 2024, with Wolves following it on September 20th. In an interview with the publication, Wolves star George Clooney revealed that talks are already underway for a sequel, which has me very, very excited. Very, very cool to see Apple Originals hitting the theatres once again in 2024.
And George Clooney, of course, co-stars in Wolves opposite Brad Pitt, who is currently filming an F1 film for Apple TV Plus called Apex. And this week we got a first look photo from the film. Also in production, Billy Crystal-led psychological thriller Before has resumed filming in New Jersey. The series follows Eli, a child psychiatrist who encounters a troubled young boy with a haunting connection to Eli's past and the recent loss of his wife. And Season 2 of Silo has resumed production in the UK.
A week after its Season 1 finale, The Buccaneers has been renewed for a second season on Apple TV+. And no, the curse has not lifted, Devon. John Hamm, however, will star in Your Friends and Neighbours, a new drama series created by Jonathan Trapper, the showrunner of See. He'll play a recently divorced hedge fund manager who, after being fired, resorts to stealing from the wealthy in his upstate New York suburb to keep his family's lifestyle afloat. And For All Mankind seems to have been quietly renewed for a 5th season, with The Handmaid's Tale and The 100 producer Kira Schneider announcing via a now deleted post on X that she has joined the team behind the forthcoming season.
Well, that's all for in-production news. Let's talk about awards. The Daytime Emmy Awards were announced this week, and Home Season 2 took away 2 awards, including Best Directing Team and Outstanding Music Direction and Composition. The Children's and Family Emmy Awards were also announced. Several awards for Apple Originals, including Outstanding Younger Voice Performance to Mariah Nash for Pinecone and Pony, Outstanding Writing for a Young Teen Program to Life by Ella, Outstanding Visual Effects for Jane, and Outstanding Casting for Best Foot Forward. So Apple's family and children's programming continuing to rake in the awards. And finally, the Producers Guild of America Awards nominees for sports, children, and short form categories were announced this week. 2 Apple Originals were nominated. In Outstanding Children's Program, The Velveteen Rabbit received a nod. And in the category Outstanding Short Form Program, Carpool Karaoke received a nomination. Now, the nominees for theatrical motion pictures, animated theatrical motion pictures, television series and specials, and television and streamed motion pictures will be announced on January 12th, with all the winners honored on Sunday, February 25th.
Of course, there are also releases this week, alongside the news and all of the best films to catch up on. You also have, appearing in the TV app on Friday, Saga Mini Friends, New Year's special, alongside new episodes of For All Mankind and Monarch Legacy of Monsters. On Wednesday, we see the finale to Slow Horses, a season we will be recapping when we return in the new year. And a quick recommendation from yourself, Devon, because when we got round to reviewing this last week, it was only I that at the time had seen the now most viewed movie in Apple TV history. The short history that it is. Of course, I'm talking about The Family Plan. What did you think?
I just had to say, I had a lot of fun with this one. This film is very dumb. It knows that it's dumb, and it leans into it, and I appreciate that. It's a lot of fun. The character that Mark Wahlberg is playing is so ridiculous. Every time he opens his mouth, it just cracks me up. My favorite little quirk of his character is every time he says that someone was supposed to do something, he says they're meant to do something. And there's no explanation for where that little verbal quirk comes from. Like, not that he's from some odd place or something, but just the way he speaks cracks me up so much. There actually is a little bit of a theme to the film, a little take home about remaining true to yourself when you become a parent, which of course is a theme that resonated with me, having recently become a father. But ultimately, it's just a laugh. It's just a lot of fun. And again, just dumb in the most fun way and enjoyable. I'll say, don't take this film seriously because it's not meant to be taken seriously. Just enjoy it for the ride that it is. But I do recommend checking out The Family Plan on Apple TV+.
Maybe the perfect reprieve after a screening of Killers of the Flower Moon on Christmas Day.
Now, some other ways to lift your spirits this holiday season. Apple has some fun extras. They're getting into the print your own craft game with a couple of kids and family shows. Velveteen Rabbit has a watch-along coloring experience. We'll leave a link in the show notes to where you can print off these coloring pages for your child that they can fill in as they're watching the film. And also, Shape Island has put out a make-your-own Yeti Flake craft. So if you're looking for some fun things to do with a young child over the holiday break while you're watching your Apple Originals with them, we'll link these in the show notes. On YouTube, Apple put out part 3 of the directed by Martin Scorsese documentary for Killers of the Flower Moon. If you're at home for New Year's Eve, but you want to feel like you're out on the town enjoying a concert, Apple has something for you. They have a Apple Music Live New Year's Eve concert featuring DJs Peggy Gao and Honey Dijon live from Brooklyn. So if you want that vibe in your living room and you're not able to get out for New Year's Eve, here's a chance to experience that. And currently running in the Apple TV app is the Best of MLS 2023, recapping all the best scores and saves and all the best moments from the season that was. And if you're looking forward to the 2024 MLS season, MLS Season Pass put out the schedule this week, including the kickoff on February 21st between Inter Miami and Real Salt Lake, Rivalry Week running from May 11th through 18th, and the MLS Cup on December 7th. Full details of the exciting season are linked in the show notes.
So lots and lots to watch in the TV app to catch up on when it comes to films, and lots to look forward to ahead in 2024. But we end this week with a quick list of up next holiday picks and a bit of a Secret Santa reveal. So what are you going to be watching, and what do you recommend as your holiday picks on the TV app over the holiday season?
Well, for me, Christmas wouldn't be complete without a viewing of Home Alone, my all-time favorite Christmas movie since I was a kid. I recommend everyone check that one out. But also the classic specials, a Charlie Brown Christmas, a Garfield Christmas special, of course, Elf, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, whichever version you want to watch, they're all approved by me. A couple of maybe more adult picks for once the kids go to bed. You've got Violent Night featuring David Harbour. This came out last year. This is where Santa has to save an abducted family. And as the title implies, it gets pretty rough. Mr. Robot Season 4, I'm currently binging right now. The entire season takes place over Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. Very condensed timeline, but technically a Christmas show, if you want to think about it that way. I've got a music pick, an album called Let It Snow Baby, Let It Reindeer by Reliant K. This has been my go-to Christmas album since I was a teenager. I've always been a fan of the band. They've got some fun Christmas classics, Your 12 Days of Christmas, and We Wish You a Merry Christmas, alongside some originals, and a rendition of Good King Wenceslas, which is one of my favorite Christmas songs, very underrated, and one that I love listening to every year. I also want to recommend Apple has a collection of Yule logs in their holiday collection in the TV app. So if you're looking for one of those fake fireplaces to put up on your TV during your Christmas party, there's a wide collection of them from all kinds of streaming services, including some family-friendly ones. So be sure to check out that list. The final thing I'm watching over the holidays isn't a Christmas movie, but it just came out on the TV app, and I'm so excited about it. That's The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, available now to rent or purchase in the TV app.
Very, very cool. And also, I think as part of a 5-pack with the original Hunger Games films.
Oh, very cool.
So if you are wanting to recap on the previous films, you have the best way of being able to buy them all together. My Christmas-themed picks include The Addams Family from 1991 because, well, it was set at Christmas. Bad Santa, which is unconventional but very, very funny, from 2003. Black Christmas, not the remake, but the 1974 original for all of you slasher fans out there. And then Carol, which is a 2015 romantic period drama film directed by Todd Haynes, starring Cate Blanchett and Rooney Mara. It has fast become like the Christmas film that I have to check out every year after I've watched Gremlins 2, The New Batch, especially for the New York sing-along at the end there. And for something a little more recent, The Holdovers from 2023, the latest Alexandra Payne film, looking like getting some nominations during award season, and who knows, may even be up for Best Picture, which I think will be the first in a very, very long time for a Christmas-themed film. But my other picks for seeing out the rest of the year include Dream Scenario, of course, number 5 in my top films of the year, alongside Good Grief, which is a beautiful drama coming to Netflix from Dan Levy in his directorial film debut. And then we also have Saltburn, which is available now on Prime Video for those that want something a little more art house. Cool little dance scene at the end there for some of you. Time Bomb Y2K, which is a documentary on the turn of the millennium on Max. And Society of the Snow, an upcoming film on Netflix about a Uruguayan flight that crashes in the remote heart of the Andes, forcing survivors to become each other's best hope. In terms of TV shows, Pokemon Concierge on Netflix, and Season 2 of What If on Disney+, which takes a unconventional look at the MCU. So really, really love to see that show is returning. Finally, before we return on January the 7th, you have the Primetime Emmy Awards on January 6th. Of course, this show will return on January 7th. And when we do return, we're going to be reviewing a film each of the other's choosing. This is our Secret Santa, which means that we both choose a film in the TV app for the other to review. I do like to kind of push you to watch things that you may otherwise not. And so my Secret Santa to you, Devon, for review on our first episode of 2024 is Ari Aster's Beau is Afraid, about a reserved man who makes regular visits to a therapist to manage his anxiety, but finds himself challenged when he embarks on a tumultuous and emotional odyssey to get home to his mother. And let me just say that synopsis gives absolutely nothing away. This is one of my favourite films. It's not necessarily a comfortable watch, but it is a film that will make you think. And it has some links to Apple and their original film output from this year. Of course, headlined by Joaquin Phoenix, who also played Napoleon this year, and directed by Ari Aster, who has been heralded as one of the inspirations behind Killers of the Flower Moon and Martin Scorsese's take on the story and the direction he wanted to go. That is my gift to you, Devon. Your thoughts?
First of all, thank you so much. I appreciate the gift. Based on what you've said about this film in the past, I imagine I'm going to be very on edge after this film, but I appreciate you pushing my boundaries, and I look forward to reviewing it on our next episode. Now, in kind, I'm gifting you a film that I don't imagine you would have watched on your own either, and that is my number 2 pick of the year, Taylor Swift, The Eras Tour. And I do consider this a gift, Sigmund, because it brought me a lot of joy. Of course, I love her music. I hope that you'll appreciate it as well. I know you've got a lot of background in the music industry, so I think you'll have some good things to say on this from the live event production standpoint as well. So I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts on Taylor Swift, The Eras Tour. Merry Christmas to you.
And a very Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to all of our listeners. It has been quite a year, and to celebrate, have a look at maybe 1 or 2 pieces of artwork within the chapter artwork this week for a little surprise. Hopefully you get there first.
Sneaky, sneaky. I like it, Sigmund. Well, that brings us to the end of our final episode of 2023. Thank you so much to everyone for listening this year. It's been a great year for the podcast, and we couldn't have done it without all of you. Of course, we'd love to hear your thoughts on the show, so be sure to follow us on Apple Podcasts and leave us a rating and review there. You can contact us on social media via the links in the show notes. And you can send an email to the show or send us an iMessage to mrolfm@screentimes.net. Of course, that will be linked in the show notes as well. We'll be back in 2 weeks. So until then, stay safe, watch some Apple TV, play some Apple Arcade, and happy holidays, everyone.
Ho, ho, ho.